Welcome to the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, where rude mechanicals do magic. Hello, I'm Bronze Age, Director of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage. And in this week's episode of Chair Hospital, we've got a case of where the Beatles broke up the chair. This is damage from the notorious powder post beetles, which leave this fine, almost like talcum powder sawdust behind. Powder post beetles are a nuisance and a hazard as well. For some reason, they are mostly on coastal areas. I looked this up and it says that all down the Gulf Coast, up through the East Coast, then California, all up into the Pacific Northwest, these beetles attack wood like this. And they don't seem to be like in Iowa or Arkansas anywhere like that, which makes no sense, because if there was ever a bug which was better suited for being transported around by humans, because it lives in wood for most of its life, it seemed like there wouldn't be a better one. But basically what starts off here is a beetle, a little tiny beetle, probably something that most people wouldn't notice, lays an egg in the pores of the wood. The egg hatches, the larva comes out, the larva is very hungry, and that's the one that eats all these little tunnels through the wood. Then, depending on the temperature, it can live inside the wood for anywhere from a couple months to years. Turns into a pupa, sleeps for a while, then emerges as a full-grown adult bug who's ready to lay more eggs in the wood. Now, it's kind of unusual to see this in a chair, because anytime you've got varnish or paint, there's not going to be wood pores for the bug to lay the eggs in. But there's probably enough bare wood exposed at little joints like this where one can get in, and then once one is in, more follow, and then just on and on and on. This is probably the result of many years of untreated bug infestation. Now, this is something of an unusual chair. First off, you look on the back, they've got a little rack here which would hold a hymn book. On the top, we've got this rail, and what this actually is a pew chair. If you look on the bottom here, you can see some marks where a rail has been fastened in it, and there would be 5, 6 in a row forming a pew. I've never actually seen one of these before, but right now I've got 4 of them in the lab, this one being in the worst condition. The seat is just a solid slab. The backs are one piece, and the front legs are tenoned into the bottom of the slab. Very conventional chair design. No maker's mark whatsoever anywhere on it. I have a feeling that probably these chairs were made in a furniture mill that made ordinary, in this case we call them dining room chairs, and then another shop took those chairs, cut the top off, and then added this. Fortunately, the old glue joints come apart without too much effort. Now, the immediate problem is reproducing this piece here. Fortunately, the one on the other side is in good condition. Doesn't look like there's any signs of powder post beetles on this. But what it does show is someone's old attempt at a repair. All they did was just dab the glue around the outside here. Didn't get any down inside the tenon or inside the mortise around the tenon. And then apparently didn't clamp it either. And so what we're left with is this little collar of glue, which shows absolutely no adhesion whatsoever to the chair leg. In this case, that's kind of fortunate, because if they'd done a good job gluing this together, getting the chair back apart so that I could get all this out and replace it, would be a lot more difficult. Now, I've glued up 2 pieces of oak, came from an old bed rail, which is why it's got veneer on these 2 sides here. And what I'm going to do is mark it up so I can drill the holes before I turn it down. That's really a matter of personal choice, but I think that marking and drilling on something square is easier than marking or drilling on something that's not only round but tapered from one end to the other. The stretchers here are somewhere between 9/16 and 5/8. I don't have a bit that size, but I do have a 5/8, and a little slightly larger hole will give me a little more wiggle room when it comes to fitting it all together. And if there's too much slack, I can always use fine sawdust mixed in with the glue to fill the gap. Alright, I'm set up at the Craftsman King Seeley lathe. I've got my stock marked out with the critical dimensions, overall length, the tenons, and this spot here in the middle is where it's actually the largest diameter, because it's tapered, but it's not symmetrical. It's a little shorter on this end than it is on this end. So I've got to just basically cut down to my major diameter here, cut down to my tenons, and try to make it as smooth a transition as possible. On these kinds of things, measurements are not really that important. What matters is what it looks like. I've seen lathes like this that had a tool rest that was 18 inches long, and every time I take on a job like this, I wonder why I haven't made one yet. I think that's pretty good as far as eyeballing it goes, and not too far off on the measurements either. After I clean all the old glue off the stretchers, the 5/8 holes are going to be too big for a good glue joint. This is a common problem with old chairs, and I have a quick and easy solution. I glue a shaving to the tenon and it'll fit fine. Now, if this was a brand new chair, all brand new pieces, you'd want all of these parts to fit together really snug, maybe even have to drive them in. But on old work, where you've been over all the old glue and sanded it off as much as you could, trying to get a good glue surface, you've had to drill holes that are slightly bigger than the originals because apparently the original size drill bit no longer exists. In any case, a dry fit all together with nice slip fits for all the joints is critical. Because what that's going to get you is that you're going to be dependent on the glue to put this thing together, or to hold it together, I should say. And for a good glue fit, there's got to be some glue in between the boards. Okay, now all I've got to do is take it apart, put glue on everything, and then start clamping it back together. Okay, and now this sits overnight until all these joints set up. This came out pretty good. Nice and straight, not too rocky. This is Bronze Age, Director of the Secret Underground Laboratory Recovery and Salvage, and I appreciate you watching the video all the way to the end. If you'd like to see more videos, I'll have more out next week. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.